Welcome to the Adventure Athletes podcast. My name's Arwel, osteopath, run coach, PT, and most of all, runner. Today's episode we covered everything from injuries, working with people, the complexities of structuring plans and around kind of daily life, and most of all, adventure. Enjoy the episode.
What was your call to adventure?
I think it was for me it was a shift in not being able to play. I'd made a decision not to play rugby again, and then for me I journeyed from not playing rugby into running some more through that like tail end of playing rugby, and then there was an October in 2022, so not too long ago, where a friend from school had one of the run walk crawl ultras booked in, and don't get me wrong, I in no capacity trained for an ultra at that point, but I was like, I had a general background of kind of fitness that I kind of rely on, and so that was what I would call like my first like true call to like what I would say now is the type of adventure that I enjoy is kind of enjoying some trails, enjoying the outdoors, enjoying the blues and greens. I mean, that's probably what's led to where I enjoy my running now, and like a lot of the stuff that I engage with now with kind of like We Run Wales and everything else. And so that was the first step. I think in the end, you know, it was like a day out with the boys, you know, along the Gower coastal path in October, and managed to kind of get to Mumbles still on 2 feet, which was the kind of good bit to start with. I didn't quite break down, and the body didn't kind of fail me, so I think that gave me confidence that then, you know, there was more to kind of explore and enjoy, and kind of running then became my vehicle for staying healthy and kind of exploring the outdoors. I think the thought that I'd been to so many of those beaches and never really travelled between them. I've grown up in Neath my whole life. I now live in Swansea, and the thought that I'd been to so many of those like bays and kind of beaches, yet never really known what was in between, on that day really struck a chord. And so kind of being able to go, well, yeah, why don't I do this more? Why don't I know what's between 2 points rather than kind of just the two kind of points that you'd expect to know. And so that's kind of what has been my motto behind like a lot of my trail running now, is like, if I know there's a good place that way and I know there's somewhere else there, I want to know what else is in between. And so kind of journeying those places on foot, and having the capacity to do it, I think is also the thing that you've got to think about with these things, is partly what drives the adventure.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone put it like that. It's trying to figure out, well, there's 2 points there, like what's in between? How do I get there on foot? Because there's always going to be a way, like unless you then cross in like oceans and stuff, but regarding you're on the same piece of land, and it's like, yeah, why not figure out what's between them? You said about you didn't really train for your first ultra. But you seem to, like, everyone I talked to, like myself, who didn't train for their first ultra, left it broken and battered, and you was just like, yeah, I was alright.
Yeah, I mean, it hurt, but like in places, and I mean, I was in no means competing with the course on that day. Like, it wasn't there for me to, you know, it wasn't a performance based goal that day. It was all very much a social occasion with a group of friends that were out to do it as well, and at some points we'd slow down and we'd eat some more, and then we'd get moving again, and some people would take a bit longer at one aid station, but then they'd catch us up, and then we'd take a bit longer at the next aid station. But broadly speaking, yeah, it wasn't was it kind of, I don't think now I kind of know where I can push my body to, and I've probably done it a bit too much sometimes, and left myself in an absolute hole. But yeah, I think that early on it was more about just the idea of being outside, having a day out, getting from A to B, and like I say, that exploring of the points between. Thinking back, like, yes, the days after were sore, and your ability to get up and down stairs is affected, right? But like, that's to be expected when you're covering a distance that you've never covered before, and the type of terrain that you end up covering on those types of events, where there is probably more elevation than you'd ever be able to do in a normal kind of day. And at the end of the day, that's probably not even that much in comparison to some of the other events around now. I think of like some of those extreme events where you add in as many of the peaks through the beacons as you can, and suddenly you're going, oh, okay, yeah, that's another level again. I think if I was to take something like that on then, that would have broken me. I don't think I'd have had the ability. But I think having played rugby and had a kind of a general level of strength behind me, and I think again from work and understanding the body, like knowing where a limit is for tissues or for like the physiological system, I always say it gives me a little bit of a head start, and I know then where and when to maybe hold back a bit and sometimes push on. Don't get me wrong, like sometimes work against me, and I think sometimes that conscious thinking overrides maybe my subconscious ability to keep going and just want to do more. But broadly speaking, I think I say it's nicer to undercook it and not have big problems than overcook it too frequently.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a problem I have. Is I've always convinced myself that when I start feeling pain, because like you'll be out on a run and sometimes you'll just get like a bit of a niggle, and you're like, oh, is this a niggle or is it an injury? And I just always convince myself, even if it's like an injury, I'm like, oh, it's just a niggle, it'll be fine, keep going.
Yeah, I think we're all bad for it, right? I'm like deep in a marathon training block now, and something hurts on most days, right? Like pounding probably too much tarmac, not enough grass, building mileage over time, squeezing in as much intensity as you can. Yeah, like my feet hurt, my calves hurt, my right hip's been hurting, and as you say, you don't want to tell yourself that you should stop. I've been very close to thinking, oh, this can't get any worse, in the sense that if it does, that's when I'd have to kind of say, right, I really do need to make a change. I'm quite lucky that I've got colleagues that can help me and kind of treat things as they kind of crop up, and so often I'm ahead of the game in that sense, where the minute I start feeling something, I'm happy to be like, in your next block, can we just pay a bit of attention to, and we're often able to kind of treat each other in that sense. And yeah, I did end up having some treatment recently for kind of my foot, ankle, just my whole right leg, pretty much my whole right side, that I just seemed to have just carried a bit too much effort and work. And I was probably in the same scenario as you, going, it's a niggle, it's a niggle, it's a niggle. And I was like, okay, it may be a niggle, but you just need to pay it some attention, and not compound any problem that might then become more problematic. It helped that I knew that I was coming into this week, and this week's like a down week, and so you're just like, oh, one more week. One more week. And so yeah, it's always contextual, I think, knowing, as you say, how far into your training you are, how close an event is the training you're doing now or in the next few weeks going to benefit you in the long run, or actually maybe become more of a problem, in terms of the maybe the bigger picture. And yeah, I think having your own advice is great, but sometimes just soundboarding it off other, like again in my case it's colleagues, but other professionals, does really help.
Yeah. For someone that is sort of, they might be self-coached and they're training for their own event and they're really struggling with being able to understand their body, because like for me and you from work, like we really understand the body, and like I know I definitely take that for granted. So for someone that's not as fortunate as us to be able to have the time and energy to learn that much about the body, but they still really want to train and they're starting to feel these things, how can they differentiate between an injury and just like a little niggle? Like at what point can they just be like, okay, like this is the hard and fast?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because obviously there's a huge like social media boom currently, right, with bone stress injuries and bone stress responses, and there's been a whole host of discourse online about it all, of should they be more or kind of more aware of what they're doing to their own bodies by picking up 8 marathons a year. I guess my question would be, if you don't have that knowledge, can you reliably make that decision? And you might get it right 3 out of 4 times. I'd say the risk then is what if you don't get it right?
Yeah.
And so having a professional that you can trust and you have a good relationship with, that you can kind of bounce in and out of, that you can explain your training plan to, and kind of that professional can also understand the context in which you're willing to push and not push, and where that line's drawn. Like at the end of the day, most of us are amateur athletes. Should anything we pick up through our training really stop us from wanting to do the thing we enjoy as a hobby, for most of us? And at what point do you go, well, what if this then starts impacting my job, or my life, or my ability to pay my bills? And so I think we all have an intuitive sense of like, this is a little bit worse than I'd like it to be. And if it stops you from doing the thing you like doing, that's a pretty big giveaway, right? If you can't put your foot to the floor in the morning, that's a pretty big. If you start getting some weakness that doesn't allow that limb to work as well as it should, and you're then having to kind of compensate through another side, those are the kind of pretty big telltale signs. The smaller stuff where things hurt maybe after 4 miles, or maybe they hurt to start with but then they ease off, those are the harder ones to distinguish. But similarly, I don't think without knowing that person's context around what their training looks like, how much they're looking to do, what they're trying to train on, it might be that they could just adapt their training, right? And I think often when you're seeking a professional's advice, I think that's what you're hoping for. You're going, all right, I can go see this person, they won't tell me not to run, but instead they'll tell me to, I don't know, run but on the flats, or run but on softer ground rather than firmer ground, or run but wear a bigger heel drop, so that I'm giving my tissues a little bit of support. And I think for most things that are caught early on, managing training load and adapting how you put tissues under load is probably enough to offset something that gets worse.
Yeah.
And you may not need to stop completely. Too often though, I think people leave it too late, right? They come at the point where they need to come and see you, not when they think they should come and see you. And that for me is maybe where I would encourage people to go, right, okay, if you're not sure, that's the point. At that single point you go, I'm not sure about this, that's when you should do it.
Yeah. Because
then you go with a bit more confidence that with a few tweaks you can keep doing. And that's something I've done, right? Like, take my marathon block. I've run kind of pretty heavy mileage from Christmas through to now, and on the whole I've picked up some sore areas. And I can think of one day where I went and I was Wednesdays are typically a fairly easy run, but the club I run with decided we're going to do a Constitution Hill ladder in Swansea, and so it was just like loops of elevation, and my body's not used to that elevation at the minute. I'm running a flat and fast marathon. Last thing I'm really worrying about is extreme elevation, and my body told me the next 3-4 days, and I was like, oh god, what have I done here? And so for those 4 days I did nothing but like easy miles. There was supposed to be a session, there was supposed to be some kind of marathon paced efforts and so on, but it was like, leave it, like you're not going to gain from trying to work harder in that moment. And after those 4 days of pretty easy jogging and mileage, the body had done what it needed to do. It's built to do it really well, it's built to recover and adapt and kind of save itself. And by the start of the next week I was good to go again. So yeah, I think for me it's that point of like, if you were someone that didn't quite know enough about your body, call it earlier than you think, because you'll be better off doing that than leaving it an extra 2-3 weeks, having hammered it that extra bit, and ending up in a sticky spot where you maybe can't do something for 6 weeks. It's just not worth the trade-off, right? When you at the end of the day, we want to just enjoy.
Yeah. How do you then? Because I say it to everyone, it's like, you're injured, go see someone. Like that's the best thing you can do. Find someone that knows what's going on. And as much as I like learning about this stuff, I'm not a professional. I can do sports massage, I can help you like relieve some symptoms, but I can't fix some symptoms. I can give you some exercises as a S&C coach that might help, but again, I can't fix it. So I'm always like, go and see someone. Like, I can help as much as I can, and I research loads, but I'm not a registered professional. But then they're like, well, who do I go and see? And then that's a hard question. So like, how do you find someone that you trust, and how do you know? Because everyone to me is like, oh, do I go to a chiropractor or an osteopath or a physio, or like where? How do you know?
I think that there's probably just as much variation between those professionals as there is within the professions themselves, if that makes sense. And so often it's finding, a lot of people find people on recommendation, right? It's often like word of mouth, or a runner that has been to see someone that they got on with and helped them with their running injury, therefore you follow suit and you go see that same person. I think there's something to be said around having a sense of experience in endurance sport then broadly, that would help that professional give you more contextual advice that is relevant to you and your demands. Does it matter if it's a physio, osteopath, chiropractor? Not really. I think you'll find great, good and fairly poor of each within the profession, right? Like, that's the reality of every profession, is you'll see people that are absolute A star grade, and those that will get away with doing what feels like enough, right? But broadly speaking, I think it is hard. Like, you're right, it is hard to find the right person. I think finding someone that maybe has an ability to listen well is really important. I can think of patients that I've seen where you can already hear, not that they've said it directly, that they're not convinced that they're going to do their next event, or and then there are others that come through that door and with conviction, and again without saying it, you can just tell from their language that it doesn't matter what you say or do, they're at the start line, and so there are then kind of very different ways of having to treat those individuals. You can't just go, oh well, they've got an event in 6 weeks, therefore, we'll just tape it up, and, listening and understanding, well, what is the trade-off? Are you willing to be out for 6 months afterwards? And if so, then crack on, I can't stop you. I can guide you with some advice and some general experience of what I think might happen. And if we agree to say that you're all in, like, I'll be all in with you. That's fine. I don't mind that. And I will support you all the way through to the point you get to that start line. And I'll be there for afterwards as well when you need maybe some patching up. But so long as it's not a detriment to your, general well-being, I think most of us can recover from musculoskeletal aches, pains, strains that maybe put us out for 6 weeks, 6 months. I think the balance you got to have is, like, does that then affect that person's relationship with the sport long term? I think that's something I've always discussed with people. Is like, do you then hate what you then love now from having put your body through it in such a way, or does it take you so long to get back to a point that you don't have that same relationship with it, right? The frustration you build up over time, or the point at re-entry 6 months down the line, you feel so far away from where you were, you're completely demotivated from doing it completely. And so it gets really sometimes bigger picture. It's less about that current injury and more about, well, what are you willing to deal with? And, like, what are you willing to push yourself through? Where would you call it? Are you willing to start but not finish? Some people hate that idea, right? Some people hate the idea of not finishing a race. So yeah, it gets really difficult. But I think coming back to your original question of, like, how do you find someone? I think there's enough information online now to know from a generally whether or not someone will suit you as an individual, whether that be their website, whether that be their reviews, whether that be their social media, having a general sense of, like, is this person going to match me as a person, is probably more important than if it's a physio, if it's a chiropractor, if it's an osteopath. And then also kind of having a general sense of what are the types of care that you think are going to work for you, right? Ask yourself that before going to an appointment. Is it that I need some sound advice on how I'm going to rehabilitate this? Is it I need it strapped up? Is it that I need some, I feel like I need some manual care and some physical hands-on? Is it that I need just some reassurance that actually this isn't anything more than a niggle, and actually with a bit of managed load I can probably carry on as normal just by taking a few miles out of my week, or a little bit of intensity out of my week. And so I think, like, both knowing who you're going to see and finding someone that matches you, and then having a sense of what you want from that appointment or that visit, probably allows you to have a match that marries up a bit smoother than kind of throwing a dart blindfolded and then going, I'm not really sure why I'm here. Because it definitely allows a professional then to guide a whole session or treatment plan towards what it is you need. I mean, don't get me wrong, they should be good enough to draw that out of you as well, right? The tools they use and the communication that they've got should be that they can work that out as they kind of decipher what it is that you're there for. But not always. Not always. It's not as simple as that.
I remember I was training for a world record tyre flip, 100 kilo tyre. In my head I was like, I'm going to do a marathon. I'd signed up in my head to do that before I even knew what the world record was. The world record was like 6.7 miles, so wild difference there. But I was like, as long as I like get the world record, I'll be happy with that attempt. So I went to this physio. I was having a back problem and got recommended them. So I was like, okay, like, been having some issues, going for this world record tyre flip, and I was like, I've been having this issue with my back for about 4 years before I even thought about the tyre. So I'm like, I know it's not to do with my tyre training, but my tyre training's flared it up. Can you have a look and like try and fix it and like see what we can do for it? And then she was just like, oh, it's because you're doing so many tyre flips. And I'm like, no, because I had it before. And she just wouldn't let go, and she was like, this is a ridiculous challenge, like you shouldn't do it. And I was like, no, but I'm going for a world record, like I'm doing it. I've trained for 6 months for this. Like I'm 100% trying this challenge. I haven't just wasted 6 months for nothing where all my training was tyre flips. She just wasn't having any of it.
Yeah, and that's for me is like a great example of like a mismatch in, I guess, understanding, want, demand, like where, like there's this idea of like person-centered care or patient-centered care, and within that you have to have an idea of what that individual in your room wants, because the next person that comes in with back pain would be completely different, right? Like your back pain and what you need to do and your demands in that one instant or within that time frame is different to, I don't know, Joan that comes in through the door next and is 75 and hasn't maybe been able to do any physical activity for the last 6 months because of her back pain. Like, you're not going to treat those two individuals in the same way. And so understanding the drivers and the things that make you in that instant want to move, need to move, and as I kind of said to you earlier, like in that instant there was no one that was going to likely tell you you can't flip tires, right? And so you'd probably have it, like in my eyes, you'd probably use some tools to make your lower back feel better in that moment. That might be a little bit of manual therapy just to make you feel like your body's easier. Is that going to fix your back pain in that moment? Probably not, because you're going to go start flipping tires again, right? So things are going to start loading again. But likelihood is you'd look at going, well, can we manage how many tires we flip but train your back in a similar way that builds the capacity that we can just flip tires on the day? Like, there is a limit to the need of specified like training, if that makes sense. You know,
there was a real mismatch, not just with the physio but with my coach at the time, because he was a running coach. Nothing against him as a coach, he's a really good coach, but he wasn't really good for tyre flip coaching. So
I wonder why.
my whole coaching was just tyre flips, and I was doing like hours of tyre flips, like a absurd amount of tyre flips, and then an easy run, and that was my whole training. That was it. And I was just like,
whereas like we could have probably gone with like, I don't know, 3 like very strong like tyre flip focused type strength sessions at the gym, where maybe you were deadlifting, shoulder pressing, push pressing, whatever you want to like do that replicates those patterns, makes your training kind of somewhat safer, but more structured in the sense that you know exactly how much kind of force you're moving within a session. You drag that out over time so that you're kind of maximizing either, well, in your case you'd probably look at like repetition over volume, and then from there go, right, yes, we are going to have to begin with like 2 tyre flipping sessions a week, and the closer we get to the event, I want you on that tyre. You know, I want you to really know and feel like how effectively and efficiently you can move that tyre, and as you build through that process, like you build it in stages in a way that you'd hope in a way that you don't get the back pain in the first place. Right, like that would be the ideal scenario, but inevitably when you're putting the body under more stress, more strain, changing its conditions like quite quickly from possibly running to then tyre flipping, it's no surprise that something then starts hurting, right? But like within that, it's going, right, how do we control the measures that we can control?
My whole thing at the time was just, wasn't that like, I knew it wasn't going to get fixed, like you're saying, like was flipping a lot of tires. Like, something's gonna hurt, especially on the attempt. But I was like, I want to manage it to the point where, like, because it's mostly like my upper back. Like, I get these neck spasms, and then it like I can't like move my neck without it spasming, and then I'm like, right, I'm bedbound for days. Like, I don't want that. Like, can we just manage it so I don't get that? Like, I don't mind a bit of a stiff neck where you're like, oh, that's a bit tight, because I'm like, okay, like what I'm doing is extreme, but it's like, can I just not have the bedbound, the part where it then affects my training? Can I just, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, like you say, just that mismatch, right? Like, I think as therapists or as professionals within that space where you treat patients in pain, you never really see the people that don't get on. Does that make sense? Like, you only hear your own success stories, so you think you get this bias that actually my method's the best method, because if someone didn't like your care, they just don't turn up. They'll go find someone else without telling you, and that's the last you'll see of them. And that very rarely gets back to you as a professional, right? And so, I think there's something to be said around like self-reflection, and there's a lot of that in kind of osteopathy around like self-reflective practice and kind of having peers come and kind of discuss how it is you think about how you work, what parts you need to develop, where are your weaknesses in your care, and maybe what are your strengths, and do you double down on some of those strengths, or actually do we fill some of those gaps where, in that case, I would say there was a need to have better communication skills or questioning skills to better understand your motivations. I always say to patients, I've got people that you've kind of got to put the reins on and say, come on, hold back, please, and you've kind of got to not beg them, but like say, you're really gonna, just a little bit further back, and in 2 weeks I'll let you go, right? And that's enough to kind of go, okay, yeah, just 2 weeks, okay, yeah, great. And then there's other people where like you have to physically kind of get them to do more, and there's everything in between, and like when you can't quite work out what person's in front of you in that sense, it's hard to offer the right care. I think it's really hard. If you don't know the person, it's hard to then know the care plan that matches that individual best.
Yeah.
And so it is it's not an easy space to work in, and you'll never get it right 100% of the time, and anyone that claims they do is absolutely bullshit. There is, I finish most days with questions around whether or not that was the right choice, or whether or not kind of, did I explain something well enough, or actually did I explain something a bit too much for that person, and then did they need a bit less kind of medical jargon then per se, and just a very simplified, like, look, this is safe to move, and here are some options, but don't feel confined by these options. A gentle walk around the park will do you just as good, and they have that kind of flexibility then to go, oh yeah, I don't actually want to do some of my specific rehab exercises today, I just want to go walk my dog around the park. And they'll do that, and sometimes that's 10 times more valuable for them, because they go, oh, I've got freedom, I've got autonomy of choice, and those things can be hugely impactful when it comes to getting better. When someone can realise, oh, actually I can do a bit more without being told to do more, that can be the trigger that gives them that kind of snowball momentum to get them feeling from where they were to feeling so much better.
No, it's definitely, like you're saying, it's definitely a hard space to work in, and having that ability to read people and be like, because some people just want to be told, do this, don't do this, right? They don't want the choice. They need that. Like, I would be someone that is like, you cannot do this, and it's like, oh, fine. Like, I need that hard rule. Having a bit of flexibility, I then
You're
try and like
play with it, right?
I'm like, how flexible is this flexibility?
It's one of those bendy rulers when you're back at school, like, whoa.
That would be me. I'm the kid that bends it till it breaks, and it's like, well, now I know the breaking point. But yeah, other people need, like you're saying, like that. Oh, I can have like a bit of bend, like walk's fine. But it is all down to knowing that person. Yeah, it's invaluable. I've never put it into words like that. Like, this is something I always find interesting with talking to people like yourself. Is it's like you have all these thoughts, and you was getting along the lines of like you're almost in like your own little echo chamber of like, oh, this is my success stories, like, because the people that aren't getting success for me aren't coming to me anymore.
Exactly.
So I've got my own little echo chamber, and then you're just like, cool, that's my views. And it's like, one, you then question, is it right or not? Like you were saying, you're like, have I done the right thing here? Like, could I be doing it better? Am I doing just like completely the wrong thing and I just don't know, but it's working, so I'm going to stick with it. But it's also like, I tend to not verbalize things then. And it's like, I've got all these beliefs in my head. I'm like, I think this is the right thing, and I think this is how I should do stuff. But where I haven't spoken to people about it, it's like, it's refreshing to then talk to someone and then tell you, and it's like, yes, that's what I've been thinking, but without verbalizing it, you don't really know that's what you've been thinking at the same time. Yeah, I don't know. I just found that really interesting.
I think there's I think you say manual therapy and the kind of healthcare space around musculoskeletal care is kind of like these two contrasting ends of a spectrum, right? Those that maybe dive into the real biomechanical, we need to fix this and move that and press this, and if this kind of works better and we load it well, then great. And then there's this other kind of, I'd say, spectrum where you're looking at more kind of the, I like the analogy of like the ecosystem then of like thinking of the body more as a plant or like a rainforest. And when too many things are off, so if it's not getting enough sun or too much sun or not enough water, too little water, if the air around it isn't, in our case that might be we're not getting enough sleep, we're stressed to our eyeballs with work or whatever other stresses and strains we've got, then we're also putting our physical bodies through it because we're going, oh well, I actually still got that marathon coming up that I got to train for, so I'm going to take out a few hours sleep and run a bit more, which, okay, yeah, great. Physical activity is of course healthy for us, but in that case, you'd go, well, actually, do you need that extra hour of running, or would you benefit from that extra hour of sleep? And when you start to like, again, explore some of those ideas, often I find a lot of people that are in pain have just swung the balance way out of kind of out of balance. You end up with people that aren't sleeping, overtraining, in work, and maybe aren't fueling quite correctly, and in the end something's got to break, and often it's your body going, ow, that hurts. Which isn't then again the easiest to care for, right? Because when you've got to tell that person, oh look, we need to balance this out, like how do we balance that out? And then you've got to make these behaviour or health behaviour changes. They're not as easy to change. They're not as easy to change as kind of someone pressing or pulling or manipulating someone's joint or muscle to make it feel better. And so as you say, sometimes our own biases become our own problems, where it made them feel better, therefore it must work. Well, yeah, in some cases, like we know that manual therapy has quite what I describe as like short-term pain altering effects. Does it really change your body and your tissues capacity over long term? Not really, that's pretty kind of standard. But what it does do is give you a window of better movement, a window of feeling less pain, a sense of confidence often from having that place moved, that you can move that place as well, right? And you then go away and you tend to work it more in that time where those other things change. that's what often helps that person get better. It's everything else around it, right? The other contextual changes, the ability for them to go, oh, you know, yes, I've given myself a moment to breathe and relax and not think about stress at work, and I have given myself an extra hour in bed, and those are the things that I think have the biggest impact. I just often see myself as a facilitator to make sure the patient can do those things, or understands that they are even part and parcel of what's becoming a problem for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I've gone straight off like running, and we're straight into kind of injury world. It's
I'm fascinated by the body and injuries, and helping people with injuries as well. Like, you've probably seen all the books there. Like,
wasn't it something earlier?
Yeah, there's a lot of books about injuries, and for good reason, because I've had many of them. So then I'm like, cool, how do I not get injured again? So I'm fascinated. Like I was saying in Kath's podcast, about how I would love to be a physio, but I've just never gone to get the qualification. But if I could take the test and become one, I 100% would. Like,
you're willing to commit 3 years is the question, right? It's kind of, I think, the more or less, or possibly, what is it? I don't know. Did they do I think there's probably a conversion course as well. Yeah, it's interesting, because I think there is currently a need for more modern ways of becoming healthcare professionals. There has been, and there probably still is, right, a constraint currently that realistically, to become a doctor, a nurse, an osteopath, a physio, you've got to go to university, and that's a massive barrier for like a huge number of the population in the UK. And there are people that I know would be great physios, osteopaths, chiropractors, doctors, but the bar to entry is too high, and that can be educational bar of entry, that can be a financial bar of entry, or a time commitment, right? Like, some people can't commit 3 years, 4 years, or whatever it may be. Like, my course was 4 years, and they were intense years. Like, you know, I probably left that 4 years at my unhealthiest. But then at that point I was like, right, I'm done. I can, you know, crack on now. I can go work and explore the things I enjoy a bit more again, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a need to kind of, I think, explore ways in which I think you could get kind of people into these professions in a slightly different way.
Yeah. I say it all the time as well, but then I never have an answer myself, because it's like you still need that regulation. You still need to make sure that there is a level of competency there.
Of course.
And like, it has to be managed somehow. But for me personally, like, I don't like how things are taught generally. I don't like things like essays and there's things like that where and I just look at it and I'm just like, how much of that is really impacting my ability to do a certain job? Like, I was trying to get a job before to do with strength and conditioning coaching. Now, I've got a strength and conditioning qualification, but I didn't go to uni for it, and I've got years of experience doing it, and I got turned down from the job because they were like, oh yeah, but you don't have a degree. And I was like, no, but like, look at this experience and the portfolio. And they were just like, yeah, but you don't have a degree. So they ended up going with someone that was fresh out of uni. And then I was just like, this doesn't make sense. But I get it, because they're trying to go with the registered, like, this is the standard that we're looking for. But it's like, how do we find more practical ways to get people in these jobs. Like you're saying, there's so many people out there that would be amazing in these jobs, but it could be something as simple as like what I said, like I don't want to write an essay to be a physio or something like that, but I'm happy to spend hours reading and researching, and I will do like a verbal test.
You can present that information in different ways, right? Yeah, 100%. But
just asking me to like write an essay and like have like references and dissertations and stuff, I'm like, I'm not interested. And it's really off-putting, but it's like, do you need to do that for the job? Probably not. Like,
it is. I do think, that I think broadly speaking, higher education is going through an absolute kind of overhaul at the minute, right? They're struggling for a whole host of different reasons, and so it'll be interesting to see how kind of both universities and the government kind of look at filling workforces, because it'll become a problem. There's an aging population, and you end up with fewer people that are going to university. Well, that doesn't fill the gap, and so then maybe apprenticeships are kind of a bridge, and then you have other kind of methods of entry that like you say, it could be that actually you build professional workspaces where actually it's like a foundation in itself to doing the next thing, and you get these professional ladders that allow you to build through from one thing to the next, knowing that you've built, as you say, a portfolio of experience, and you can show that and prove that, and I think there is a general sense that there will, I think, inevitably be change. I think it won't persist the way it does, because also a lot of the people that do finish courses out of university get into the real working world and they burn out within 5 years, and so then you have even more people falling out of these professions, right? You see I think that I can't remember the stats on like physios and doctors more recently that I read, but it's a scary attrition rate. Numbers dropping left, right, and centre. But I think the next 5-10 years will be interesting, put it that way.
I hope there is a change, because it was something that I could have really like gotten myself into a lot younger, but it's just there's the desire for it, but not enough to make me be like, okay, let's go to uni. Like, why do I have to go to uni? I don't want to go to uni, but like, and then I found ways around it, right? Like, I've worked in various different sports and built up to like coaching at fairly high levels and helping with like national teams and things like that, and it's like, so I've found a way in, very unconventional way in, and it's taken like a lot more work than if I'd just like come out of uni and been like, I want that job, and gone for that job and potentially got it. It was a lot of work, but like I've learnt a lot from doing that as well, right? So it's definitely not wasted, but then it's like sometimes it feels it, because once you've built up all that experience and then you're getting turned down from things, it's like, but I've got the knowledge, I've got the experience, I've proved it time and time again, but and I've just ended up being like, right, I'll just work for myself, I'll do my own thing. Which definitely has its benefits, I can't lie.
Exactly, you can mould it to be what you want.
But like, it would be a shame for it to stay the way it is, and the world's changed massively, and it's like, the education system hasn't, like, it really needs to. And they were going on about, education's all going to be online, like from COVID and stuff, and I'm like, I don't think that's the right way either. That was just filling a need at the time, but there's got to be a better way. But again, I'm not the person for the answers, so
exactly. I think it's such a large, complicated system, and kind of the relationship between kind of higher education, workforce demands, and kind of generally kind of, as you said, the different ways you can learn now, right? The number of people that don't learn from going to university and will drop straight into a job and learn on the job, or learn online and create their own career paths. you see more of it, and I think it's because it's more accessible, which inevitably then drives fewer people to university in the first place. There's another way of doing this.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like you say, the different freedoms that come with having a kind of a self-employed kind of freelance type job. Some people want that now. Like they I'll take more freedom and flexibility over an opportunity that maybe fixes me to a location, or sometimes to a structured way of working any day of the week.
Yeah.
And I think most people would, right? There is something, I think, taking it back to kind of the kind of endurance side of things and running, but like the ability to say, well, actually, I do want to train for this, and I do want a few more hours here on that day, and being able to do that is a luxury.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's surprising how, when you do feel that balance of kind of like, oh, okay, my work works for me, that's where I'm at now. It's like the balance and structure of it all seems to just allow me to train as much as I want, enjoy the things I like doing, work and make a living, and in doing so I also work in a way that gives me fulfillment. Like, I enjoy working with people and getting them back to doing what they enjoy doing. Sound like happy days, so yeah, it's like, I think there are nice flexibilities to have there.
Yeah.
I guess as we were discussing earlier, the problem is when all these different things come at you at once, and then the workload goes from being like this nice sustainable level to then everything maxing out, and you're like, oh god, where's my extra hour of the day gone now? Right? Funny.
I'm the worst for that. Like, I'm always like, okay, like I need some more me time, and then I'll like, right, I can cut down here, and then as soon as I've cut down, I'm like, oh, but I've got this idea, and like, how can I now do this? And I'm like, well, I've got the time for it now, and then it's just like, oh, straight to the edge of burnout. Like, yeah, I'm horrendous for it. Going back, like linking that nicely to training then and your profession, like, I definitely find this, but do you find that we spoke about how your profession can almost be a benefit when you're doing these things, being like, oh, I can feel the difference between like when I need to get something looked at and like I know how to treat it, but do you also walk the line of it can be like detrimental, because it could be something along the lines of, well, I know not just like the top end of like this is like it, but it's also the bottom end of, right, this is how much I can push it to like overtraining and things like that, and this is how much I can push like my lack of eating or lack of sleeping and still get away with it, not to the point where it's like obviously affecting performance, but like walking that fine line of like being injured.
I think subconsciously I think having that knowledge from kind of, like I say, work and university, where you understand the kind of physiological processes, the adaptations that happen from training, and how fitness truly develops. Yes, of course, there's an importance to like a block of training, but similarly, there is only so much you can like squeeze out of a lemon, right? Like, some stuff just takes time and consistency over a long time. And so I feel like with the goals that I set myself for an event or for training, they tend to be quite realistic because I have a general sense of measure. And yes, there's an edge to them. I mean, I've got Newport Half Marathon on Sunday there, and there's like an idea of how fast I'd like to run, but similarly, we don't know what the weather's going to be like. And yes, my training block's gone really well so far. I'm going to have 3 days off this week that I can't remember the last time I had 3 days off. And, there are things that you can control and things you can't control. And broadly speaking, I'd say I always kind of sit in a position of being more cautious with my training, knowing that if I don't get injured for 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks, those 8 weeks will pay off from doing less than trying to maximize and risking injury. And so there's a sense of like longevity in my planning as well. So it's, yes, there is a final date for where my kind of marathon is now, and there's a peak to all that training, and there's a kind of cycle there that I'm going, right, that's how it's going to work. But on top of that layer, then there is, well, I also want to run when I'm 70. You know, I don't want to put my body through a cycle of this kind of like peak trough that is so detrimental that my body ends up broken at the end of it. So knowing that, you know, actually being consistent for a long period of time is probably better off than these huge peaks where actually your general level of fitness maybe just stays the same, because for every peak you get, you lose out on that every time you're not moving for, say, 3-6 months, whatever it might be. Yeah, I'd always say, like, I tend to stay on the kind of cautionary side where I'd rather do less than more.
Yeah.
And I mean, one thing I rarely kind of lose out on is sleep. So, like, those are my two kind of bankers, is kind of like training load and sleep. My diet could be a lot better than it is, but I definitely don't worry about eating more, if that makes sense. I don't need to worry about kind of, I've never had issues with kind of disordered eating around my training and thinking about my weight when I'm racing or anything like that. I just trust that my body's tolerant, robust, and I'd rather be tolerant, robust and strong, having trained well, fed well, slept well, and then kind of flicking a switch on the day and going, right, time to perform, like go show what you can do. This is the fun bit, you know. This is what all that hard work's gone in for. Now enjoy this bit, over kind of trying to worry too much about race day and a particular time, and then thinking, right, well, if I don't hit this pace in this session and that pace in this session, or maybe I should do one more rep, it's not worth it. It's just, it doesn't pay off in the long run.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that I need to reflect on, how to communicate that to my clients more. Because it's always like, right, here's the plan I've set you, and they'll go off and do the plan, and they might have a bad session, and they might be like, oh my god, that was the end of the world, and I'm just like, no, like, it's okay, we're allowed bad sessions, as like as long as you're sort of like hitting about 80% of your sessions, like as prescribed, like 20% variance, fine. But like to the point where it's like just being like, it's okay to just like miss a session if you want to, like, you don't have to like apologize to me and make a big fuss out of it, because I know that it does impact them like mentally as well. Like a big part of like my client base is like, I deal a lot with like mental health. They're not patients, like clients. They'll come to me because they've got mental health issues, because I'm an ambassador for a mental health charity, so I attract a lot of that, and I'm very open about my own mental health with bipolar and things like that. So I know how much training impacts your mental health. So it's, I think I need to find a way to communicate it better, where it's not going to impact their mental health and be like, oh my god, the world's falling apart because I missed the session. Because I definitely know what that feels like, and I hate that my clients feel like that too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, everything can impact that day, right, where you have a bad session from, you know, you go back to those same things, or like you had a bad night's sleep the night before, or kind of you've got a really stressful situation going on with family or work, or and maybe you're just not feeling it. Like, maybe it is actually that everything you've done up to that point has just zapped you of that energy, and where normally that routine is absolutely fine, because you've done it for 6 weeks, the body's actually gone, I just need an extra rest day. You know, I do need to just take it a little bit easier. And normally, the sooner you listen to those signals, the sooner you get back on the horse, and that routine can kind of continue, right? I think, yeah, like it works. So like, I can think of people where I've spoken to them about their run training, and they work shifts. Now, if you're working like 4 days, 4 nights, and then having 4 days off, to expect to have to like do a session on like those 4 days where you're on night shift, like, why? What do you gain? Like, you're already lacking sleep. The effort you're putting in is probably sub-max. Like, you're going to feel rubbish. Like you say, you feel that, like, oh, I just feel rubbish after this session. I can't hit my pace, or I didn't really execute that well. Whereas, you know, and that's probably because they see everyone else doing a 7-day training plan, where every Monday, every Wednesday, and on the weekends, that's what their sessions look like. It's hard, medium hard, and a long run, or something like that. And yeah, great if your week starts on Monday and ends on Sunday. But when you're on this like 12-day rotation, it just doesn't fit, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's all, you know, you've always got to have that caveat of like, anything you choose to do has got to fit your demands, right? And so kind of finding a system that works, where maybe you do your first session after a full day off. You know, that's where that first session lands in the cycle. And actually what you do is you focus on maximizing work through days off and kind of days, and then when you hit your night shifts, your focus is just recover, you know, and you can play around with those things to make it work for you, right? And I think those are the things that I often think should be thought about a bit more, rather than like, oh, is it 10 400s or 12 400s? Like, really doesn't, like, that extra 800 meters of effort isn't gonna tweak your kind of max effort on race day by much.
Yeah, because like a lot of that is like, you're just trying to get used to pushing your body in a certain way or moving your legs at a certain pace, right? And it's like, the only reason why you really add the reps and stuff is for the progressive overload. But it's like, especially with things like running and sprinting and those faster sessions, like, a lot of the progressive overload you're actually just getting by putting like a little bit more effort in, and your body being able to produce more force because it's getting used to it now, and you're just generally producing more force in the same efforts. Mm-hmm. But it's harder to show that to someone, right? And be like, look, like, this is the progressive overload. So it's like, okay, we'll do 2 more of them. Like, is that 800 meters changing? Like, for me, I coach like a lot of ultra athletes. Like, is that 800 meters changing your 100 miler?
Exactly.
Probably not. But if you do 10 of the 12, just doing that week on week, is that improving your fitness generally and the efficiency that you can move, like, biomechanically? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like,
yeah, and I think there's this real, I've noted this like really interesting kind of difference when people take on an ultra. Say if they've come from road running and then they go to take on an ultra, there's like, I've yet to like race an ultra. All my ultras have been like days out with people enjoying the outdoors. Like, that's how I use a 50k or a kind of a 30 miler or something like that. And so if I was to train for an ultra, I wouldn't spend all my time on a trail. It's just inefficient to move my physiological markers up the scale. Yes, you can replicate, you know, work that you can do on a track or on a tarmac loop by picking maybe a traily gravel track route or something like that. But similarly, if what you're looking for is efficiency in a plan and trying to get fitter quicker, I don't think you can do that as effectively or as in such a measured way that you can maximize on the trails. You just can't. Like, I can think of a friend who's gone and hit the same hill out the back of his house, and like it was like a morning session and he'd do like 20 reps, and I'm like, you know, a fairly like measurable, like consistent effort that he could persist for God knows how long he wanted to within a plan, right? 12, 16 weeks, whatever. But broadly speaking, if you want to get quicker at running over any terrain, yes, there's a sense of efficiency and specificity around the terrain you're working on, and the peaks and troughs of a trail more likely than there would be on a road race. But if you move your physiological markers up the scale, it doesn't matter what you're running on, you'll run faster.
Yeah.
And so getting a training plan that works for you, and then towards the tail end of it, adding in some of that specialization and maybe looking at the efficiencies around moving more effectively over gravel, mud, grass, uphill, downhill, you know, yeah, that's where you'd maybe turn and tweak the kind of effectiveness. But broadly speaking, if all you want to do is get fitter, there are so many different ways to skin a cat. Like, you don't have to have this, like, and I don't tend to, most of the year, have a plan around my training. I just train, and I just enjoy doing something a bit hard, something a bit long, and run in between as much as I feel like I want to. It is only then when maybe I have a goal or a focus that maybe I sit down and I plan out, and I kind of have a sense of like, I want to reach closer to max, but I'm still, like I said earlier, on the cautious side.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that I think a lot of people get wrong. I've been saying this for like a little while now as well, about how I think the biggest benefit trail runners are going to get is going to a track. Like, I don't see any like trail runners really go and do track work. And like, I run a track session every Sunday because I'm like, I've fallen in love with track work. Like, I've never done track. I just realised there's a track not that far from here, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to go do some. And then my friend used to compete in athletics, and I'm like, oh, cool, can you teach me some stuff? So he's like, teach me all these things. And I'm just like, this is awesome. Like, why are more people not doing this? And then I've started taking these track sessions, and I've got ultra runners coming along, and just seeing how they move just through basic running drills, and I'm like, they don't know how to run.
Well, yeah, like, there is something to be said around, like, when you run fast, you can't hide your inefficiencies. Like, you will soon pick up on, you know, and yes, you know, the caveat to that is everyone runs differently, and there are, you know, 100 different ways that you can run and still run effectively. But broadly speaking, kind of, when you run that much faster, yeah, it draws out kind of some noticeable things that might be changed or trained, and before you know it, you are more kind of mechanically efficient or able to move at a certain speed for longer. And yeah, I think you say track, for example, is a big identifier of that, right? Because there isn't much going on. It's pan flat. It's only so long. You've got 2 bends and 2 straights, and you know, when often you're playing a bit of cat and mouse with the person in front or behind, you know, there is that kind of mental edge of, oh God, I got to keep up here, and then slowly you're like, oh wow, why is my kind of biomechanics really breaking down on me here, and why can't I lift my knees quite so high? And it is, you know, it's like you say, weaknesses and things that then you'd probably look at as a strength and conditioning coach, going, right, here are some of those inefficiencies that I think maybe we could train. But yeah, it is, I think, yeah, I think the risk, I not the risk, but like kind of the one thing I've always thought is I'd never want to be all in on anything. You know, I don't think there's any benefit of only ever running on road, or only ever being a track athlete, or only ever, unless you are obviously like elite end. But even then, they have such a varied like training schedule. Like, it's just, you know, the stuff that the elites then talk about as 1%ers is, you know, how much foam's in my shoe, or, you know, do I have to carry that extra 30 grams of something on my, you know, kit.
See, that's another thing that I'm
crazy.
fascinated by, is like people get stuck in like the details. Like the amount of times I get asked, "Oh, what shoes shall I buy?" I don't have a clue what shoes you should buy, and I don't think you should really care either. Like, you're doing your first ever like half marathon. Like,
are they comfortable? Do you feel like you got good grip on the bottom of them? You willing to pay for them? Like,
yeah.
Mostly kind of the most important things.
Yeah.
Like,
are they going to injure you? Like, there's pictures of me running my first ultra, and I'm in like basically like skate shoes. Like, I'd never really run before. I'd never run on trail before. That was a fact. So I didn't know what trail shoes were. I was like, what's a trail shoe? Like, the trainers.
These got grip, man.
I was like, oh, in Sports Direct, the in the running section, they weren't running shoes. It was just, they're just trainers. I'm like, oh, cool, they're trainers.
In most cases, you know, you can get away with it, right? Like, you can get away getting from A to B. As long as your body's, like, say, strong enough and can conform enough, most of the time any shoe will work. I can't say much. I'm a shoe absolute fiend, and like have way too many trainers.
I'm like, if you're into it, fair. Like, be into shoes. Like, I'm not judging that, but it's like, if you're just starting out and you're like, oh, what shoes should I buy? I don't care. Just go out and run.
Yeah.
Like,
is it
you can go barefoot if you want.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole nother thing. And they're just like, oh, like, how many carbs should I be having in my first ultra? And I'm like, as many as you can eat. Oh, what about gels? No, stay away from gels. Just what foods at the aid station? What do you look at and be like, I want some of that? Like,
some party rings, a slice of oranges, jam sandwich, happy days.
Roast potatoes, they're the best. I'm just like, what? I do give them advice, obviously. I'm not that it's like, no, just eat. Like, I'm like, okay, like, generally you'd be looking at this sort of range, but like whatever you can stomach. I'm like, what have you trained with? Have you taken snacks out on a long run with you? A lot of the time, again, that's another thing that I'm finding a lot now, is a lot of the time people are going out on their long runs and they're not fueling. And then they're like, oh, I feel like really drained from my training. I'm like, you didn't eat on a 30k run. You're going to feel a bit rough. And I'm like, that is the perfect time to just practice what you're going to eat on race day. Like, go and buy some, like, Mars bars and jelly babies and take them with you.
That's
like,
it, right? And I'm just even thinking, like broadly speaking, like, kind of, do you prefer liquid-based stuff, or do you prefer solid? Like, it's just something as simple as that. Like, does your body tolerate, you know, keeping something more solid down, or does actually something, you know, that you can get down as a liquid make it a bit more palatable and a bit easier for you to move later down the line? Or is it that actually, to start with, you feel fine, and then before you know it, you feel a bit full, and you're like, oh, actually, now I want to move on to my liquids, and go, oh, that feels a bit more palatable at this current point in time. But then you do too much of anything, right, and your body's not used to it. Like, I've definitely run where I've taken on too much liquid, and that's all I can feel is my, like, stomach sloshing about, and I'm like, oh, I wish I'd have chosen to put some solids down me a bit sooner. But again, I think you only ever learn what your body likes from, you know, testing those theories, right? Like, where are my limits, where are my capacities of okay, at about 2 hours of solid, that's where I kind of, you know, feel like that's my limit now. Let's move on to the liquids for an hour, let the body do its thing, and kind of ease up some space and go again. But yeah, I think that's I think, particularly when you're looking at running longer distances, right, when you're doing anything over kind of probably a marathon distance, I mean, that should somewhat be factored into your training. Like, it's not just the running at that point that's important. And so kind of being able to, as well as within your running, know, right, briefly within each long run, I'm going to test this one on that, and then a hybrid of the two on that. and then you come away with a bit of an answer going, oh, that seemed to work better than this one. And then the next 3 long runs, you go, oh, okay, well, let's try this, and it's you know, as you said, like, you can only ever give some like fairly kind of vague advice of stuff that you've either read, learnt, or done yourself. You don't know what's going to work best for that person, and so until they go out and test those theories, like, they don't know. Like, I think, like, I ran a marathon and fuel became a big problem for me, and I'd trained with those gels. I'd run all my long runs with those gels. I'd even taken them on like sessions just to get my body used to fueling, and for whatever reason on race day, I think probably a mix of having run at max for so long and then introducing kind of probably slightly more fueling than I'd done on my longer work was enough just to swing, you know, against me, and it left me in an absolute hole, you know, like feeling like physically sick, not being able to get anything else down. And when that happens, like, what, 25-30k in, you know, that's a job then to try and get yourself moving in any capacity towards the end.
Yeah. It is definitely like you're saying, something you got to test, but like, you're gonna get it wrong.
Oh yeah.
Like, I spent all year training for my 6 ultras in 6 days, right? The whole year, every single ultra I did, I was like, okay, I'm trying this thing out for it. And 10 days before the 6, I had overnight ultra, just 12 hours, many loops as you can do. And I was like, I've got everything nailed right now. I've got the right electrolytes. I've got the right fueling strategy. I've got the right shoes. I've tested everything. This is just my final little practicing, bit of sleep deprivation, and then I'm good for my 6. And it all went to shit. And I was like, I've done everything right. I was glad it happened then and not on the 6, because it turned out like I was throwing up, and it was because I wasn't having enough electrolytes. My body just decided the ones that I'd been taking consistently, it didn't like anymore. So then, as soon as someone else gave me their electrolytes, I was like, this has worked. Like, I feel fine again. And I was like, yeah. I then ordered like 2 bottles of the stuff to just be like, cool, right, I've got that for my 6 now. That's what worked for me. It was a really nice last minute change, but like, I went into that so confident, being like, I've got everything down, and within the first like 2 laps I was like, I've not got this down at all.
Something's not working.
Yeah. So it does go wrong, but you only know from doing it.
Yeah, so, exactly. 100%. 100%.
And like, even when you're doing it in training, like, it's not going to go perfect, and that's okay. That's kind of the point. That's when
where it's not supposed to go right.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. That's the whole point of training, and training those things in training. Like, you kind of find out then, and not on the big day or on the big days or whatever it is, right? Yeah, no, it's
I think that's a good lesson that a lot of people need to learn as well, right? Is when you're training, things are meant to go wrong. Like, that's the point of the training. You know, if your training was perfect the whole time, then it's like, what have you really learnt for the race? Like, oh, I haven't hit my paces, it's the end of the world. And it's like, oh, good, like, now we know that you can't do those paces, and we can adjust and factor in this. And why couldn't you hit those paces? Was it like we've been saying, like, lifestyle stress, lack of sleep, nutrition? Or is it just like, your body's just not at that point yet, and what do we need to change to help it get there? Like, we're, even as professionals, we're figuring it out for you as well.
Yeah, exactly that, right? It's you've got to try and bring in as many of those kind of influencing factors and those things that might contribute, and go, right, okay, when we look at all of this, what do we feel is having the biggest impact? And often kind of, I'll explain to kind of a patient, like, where do you want to get the biggest bang for your buck? You know, like, what do you feel like if you changed, that would have the biggest impact for you. Because often, as an individual, you generally do have a kind of a sense of that, like, or sometimes you're telling yourself a lie to kind of avoid the fact that you know that's a problem. You're going, no, definitely I can live off 5 hours sleep. It's fine. And then when you start having these like realistic conversations, and you're going, oh, yeah, maybe that is really having a bit of an impact on everything else I'm doing. And that could be, like you say, something as simple as your mood around your training, right? It might be that you actually execute it really well, but you just feel a bit like, about it. You just think, I feel like I could have done more there. But you don't know why you can't. And it's little things like that then, yeah, I think being able to soundboard those things with someone that understands really gives you an opportunity to go, oh yeah, that is what I need to change. It gives you that like kind of aha moment of going, yeah, that's the one I've been ignoring.
Yeah.
Because don't get me wrong, I think, yes, you can suggest changes to people, but often, like, you might be miles off the mark. You might have like no idea what their big thing is, or it might be a handful of things that they need to change that add up to having a big effect, right? And yeah, it's often got to be driven by like you yourself, right? And I know my answers most of the time, but sometimes need to bounce them off like colleagues or kind of friends that they go, oh yeah, maybe you could think about changing that a bit more, doing a bit more of this. And sometimes you don't even take on the advice they have recommended because you actually know what the real answer is, if that makes sense. You go, oh yeah.
It's not always just about hearing what you want, it's about hearing, like, it's not about hearing the right answer. Sometimes it's about hearing the wrong answer and then being like, well, no, it's not that because it's this. And then it's like, okay, I've just had to admit that.
My own answer. Yeah.
I've been avoiding saying that, but now that you've said this, I have to say it.
Mm-hmm.
On that then, what do you think is going to be the biggest factor that you need to change for your marathon training right now? Just calling you out publicly.
Yeah, calling out. I mean, to be honest, I've been lucky so far that my block is going like smoothly, and so I'm waiting for that bump in the road. Realistically, for me, it's all about kind of trusting I've done the work and not doing more than needed at the tail end of the plan. Like, it's always a thing where I'm like, one more long run or slightly few more miles on this one, and cumulatively, if you do that on everything, what should be a taper soon just turns into a training week, right? So yeah, I think really trusting the fact that I'm not gaining any more fitness in those last 2.5 weeks, like even maybe 3, kind of based on my plan, and it's written down. It's just, do I execute it as well as it's written down? Like when it says rest, do I actually put my feet up and enjoy the time off, and not get jittery and go and run an extra kind of couple of easy miles or whatever it is. I think that's where my kind of main kind of kicker is. Yeah. And then also kind of, I think, going through the process to be mentally prepared to suffer. Like, yes, you do some hard long runs and you do some sessions that are hard, but very often not much prepares you for kind of the last 5-10k of a marathon. Like, I've been to the point where I've been carried over the line for the last 2k, so I know I can put my body in a hole. My next step is going, right, can I make sure that hole's after the line and not before the line? So yeah, I think that's the other thing, is really being in tune with my taper and then how I run the race. Like, I have an idea already in my head of like managing the first half more than I've ever done before, just so that it gives me the opportunity to close hard. and whether or not that becomes the right plan or not is yet to be seen, but that's how I'm confidently executing it. I've decided, like, that's how I want to approach the race. That's how I'm going to run it, and I'll hopefully run like an absolute demon in the last 10k and not end up, being carried through a line. Like, that's kind of where I'd like to be. So yeah, I'd say, the taper's the big one. Like, just trusting that the work's been done, backing off, and just settling in.
Yeah. Cool. And then going back right to the start, back to your call to adventure, what advice would you give that person just before taking on that call?
I'd say do it, and do it with friends. Like, a lot of what I do now, I execute with others in company, and there is a load of stuff you have to do on your own. We all live different lives, we all have different timetables, but broadly speaking, I don't think you can go wrong doing something with other people. Don't get me wrong, sometimes they'll be the right people, but but most of the time, if you're doing something with someone else, it is just that much more fun, easier. You'll learn stuff from one another. You'll connect on a different kind of level that maybe you're not able to do at a work meeting or at a pub or whatever it might be. And sharing those experiences is, I think, invaluable. And so that's often where kind of a lot of the trail running work that I do with, like, the We Run group and the community there comes from. It's, no one there is expecting to run a training session. We're just expecting to run a new trail, explore a bit, enjoy some bits that often don't go to plan, and do it together. And at the end of it all, we'll sit down and have a coffee and a cake and enjoy and just kind of enjoy each other's company. And I think for me, that's it. If you're going to adventure, take people with you.
Yeah, amazing advice. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. So.
Yeah, it's a whirlwind of injury, osteo, physio / running, kind of, absolute maze, but loved it.
Not what I was expecting at all today.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Oh, thanks, man.
No, awesome. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Adventure Athletes podcast. If you want to find out more about what we do at Adventure Athletes, head over to adventureathletes.co.uk and you can sign up to all of our events. You can sign up for coaching both in person and online. You can sign up for sports massage. You can sign up for outdoor activity days like the National Three Peaks and get guided by one of our expert guides. So just head over to adventureathletes.co.uk and don't forget to help us spread the word of the podcast. Give it a like, give us a follow, give it a share it with your friends, your family, your mum, your dad, your cat, your nan, everyone you can imagine, because the more views and the further we spread this podcast, the more I can keep this going. There's been a few times in the past 3 years where I've been so close to giving up, and it's all been made possible by you guys and your guest recommendations and giving us listens, giving us support so we can keep going. The more we can spread this, the bigger and better the podcast can get. Until next time, guys.